Theme 9: Kings and Chronicles. The Mughal Courts, say 16th to 17th centuries. The ruler of Mughal Empire saw themselves as appointed by divine will to rule over a large and heterogeneous populace. Although this grand vision was often circumscribed by actual political circumstances, it remained important. One way of transmitting this vision was through the writing of dynastic histories. The Mughal kings commissioned court historians to write accounts. These accounts recorded the event of the emperor's time. In addition, their writers collected vast amounts of information from the regions of the subcontinent to help the rulers govern their domain. The Mausoleum of Timur at Samarkand, 1404. Modern historians writing in English have termed this genre of text chronicle as they present a continuous chronological record of events. Chronicles are an indispensable sources of any of the Mughals. At one level, they were a repository of factual information about the institutions of the Mughal state, painstakingly collected and classified by individuals closely connected with the court. At the same time, these texts are intended as conveyors of meaning that the Mughal rulers sought to impose on their domain. They therefore give us a glimpse into how imperial ideologies were created and disseminated. This chapter will look at the working of these rich and fascinating dimensions of Mughal Empire. 1. The Mughal and their empire. The name Mughal derives from Mangal, though today the term evokes the grandeur of an empire. It was not the name the ruler of the dynasty chose for themselves. They referred to themselves as Timurids, as descendants of the Turkish ruler Timur on the paternal side. Babur, the first Mughal ruler, was related to Genghis Khan from his mother's side. He spoke Turkish and referred derisively to the Mongols as barbaric hordes. During the 16th century, Europeans used the term Mughal to describe the Indian ruler of this branch of family. Over the past centuries, the word has been frequently used. Even the name Mowgli, the young hero of Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book, is derived from it. The empire was carved out of a number of regional states of India through conquest and political alliances between the Mughals and local chieftains. The founder of empire, Jahiruddin Babur, was driven from the Central Asian homeland Farghana by the Varian Uzbeks. He first established himself at Kabul and then in 1526 pushed further into the Indian subcontinent in search of territories and resources to satisfy the needs of the members of his clan. His successors Nasiruddin Humayun 1530 to 40, 1555 to 56 expand the frontiers of the empire but lost it to the Afghan leader Sher Shah Shur, who drove him into exile. Humayun took refuge in the court of the Safavid ruler of Iran. In 1555, Humayun defeated the Surs but died a year later. An 18th century depiction of Humayun's wife Nadira crossing the desert of Rajasthan Many consider Jalaluddin Akbar 1556 to 1605 the greatest of all the Mughal Empire, for he not only expanded but also consolidated his empire, making it the largest, strongest, and richest kingdom of his time. Akbar succeeded in extending the frontiers of the empire to the Hindu Kush mountains and checked the expansionist design of the Uzbeks of Turan, means Central Asia, and the Safavids of Iran. Akbar had three fairly able successors in Jahangir 1605 to 27, Shah Jahan 1628 to 58, and Aurangzeb 1658 to 177. Much as their character varied under them, the territorial expansion continued, though at a much reduced pace. The three rulers maintained and consolidated the various instruments of governments. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the institution of an imperial structure was created. This included effective method of administration and taxation. The visible center of Mughal power was the court. Here political alliances and relationships were forged, status and hierarchies defined. The political system devised by the Mughals was based on a combination of military power and conscious policy to accommodate the different traditions they encountered in the subcontinent. After 1707, following the death of Aurangzeb, the power of the dynasty diminished. In place of the vast apparatus of empire control from Delhi, Agra, and Lahore, the different capital cities, regional powers acquired greater autonomy. Yet, symbolically, the prestige of Mughal ruler did not lose its aura. In 1857, the last section of this dynasty, Bahadur Shah Jafar II, was overthrown by the British. Discuss, find out whether the state in which you live formed part of the Mughal Empire. Were there any changes in the area as a result of the establishment of the empire? If your state was not part of the empire, find out more about contemporary regional rulers, their origin and policies. What kind of record did they maintain? Comment this. To the production of Chronicles. Chronicles commissioned by the Mughal Emperor are an important source for studying the empire and its courts. They were written in order to project a vision of an enlightened kingdom to all those who came under its umbrella. At the same time, they were meant to convey to those who resisted the rule of the Mughals that all resistance were destined to fail. Also, the ruler wanted to ensure that there was an account of their rule for posterity. The authors of Mughal chronicles were invariably courtiers. The histories they wrote focus on events centered on the ruler, his family, the court and nobles, wars, and administrative arrangements. Their titles, such as the Akbar Nama, Shah Jahan Nama, Alamgir Nama, that is the story of Akbar, Shah Jahan, and Alamgir, a title of the Mughal ruler Aurangzeb, suggests that in the eyes of their authors and the history of the empire and the court was synonymous with that of the emperor. Chagatai Turks trace descent from the eldest son of Genghis Khan. From Turkish to Persian, Mughal court chronicles were written in Persian. Under the sultans of Delhi, it flourished as a language of the court and literary writings, alongside North Indian languages, especially Hindavi, and its regional variant, as the Mughal were Chagatai Turks by origin. Turkish was their mother tongue. Their first ruler Babur wrote poetry and his memories in his language. It was Akbar who consciously set out to make Persian the leading language of the Mughal court, cultural and intellectual contacts with Iran, as well as the regular stream of Iranian and Central Asian migrants seeking position at the Mughal court, might have motivated the emperor to adopt the language. Persian was elevated to a language of empire, conferring power and prestige on those who had a command of it. It was spoken by the king, the royal household, and the elite at court. Further, it became the language administration at all levels so that accountants, clerks, and other functionaries also learnt it. Even when Persian was not directly used, its vocabulary and idiom heavily influenced the language of official record in Rajasthani and Marathi and even Tamil, since the people using Persian in the 16th and 17th centuries came from many different regions of the subcontinent and spoke other Indian languages. Persian too became Indianized by absorbing local idioms. A new language, Urdu, sprang from the interaction of Persian with Hindavi. Mughal chronicles such as the Akbarnama was written in Persian. Others like Babur's memories were translated from the Turkish into the Persian Baburnama. Translations of Sanskrit texts such as the Mahabharata and the Ramayana into Persian were commissioned by the Mughal Emperor. The Mahabharata was translated as the Rajamnama books of verse. The fight of the written word. In Abul Fazl's word, the written word may embody the wisdom of bygone ages and may become a means to intellectual progresses. The spoken word goes to the heart of those who were present or to hear it. The written words give wisdom to those who are near and far. It is if it was not for the written word, the spoken word would soon die, and no keepsake would be left us from those who are passed away. Superficial observers see in the letter a dark figure, but the deep-sighted see in it a lamp of wisdom, Chirag e Sinasai. The written word looks black, notwithstanding the thousand rays within it, or it is a light with a mole on it that wards off the evil eye. A letter means cut in the portrait of wisdom, a rough sketch from the realm of ideas, a dark light ushering in day, a black cloud pregnant with knowledge, speaking through dumb stationary air traveling, stretched on the sheet, and yet soaring upwards. The making of manuscripts. All books in Mughal India was manuscript, that is, they were handwritten. The center of manuscript production was the Imperial Kitabkhana. Although Kitabkhana can be translated as library, it was a scriptorium. That is a place where the imperial collection of manuscript was kept and new manuscripts were produced. The creation of manuscript involved a number of people performing a variety of tasks. Paper makers were needed to prepare the folios of manuscripts, scribes or calligraphers to copy the text, gliders to illuminate the pages, painters to illustrate scenes. From the text, bookbinders to gather the individual folios and set them within ornamental covers. The finished manuscript was seen as a precious object, a work of intellectual wealth and beauty. It exemplified the power of its patron, the Mughal Empire, to bring such beauty into being. At the same time, some of the people involved in the actual production of the manuscript also got recognition in the form of titles and awards. Of these, calligraphers and painters held a high social standing, while others, such as papermakers or bookbinders, have remained anonymous artisans. Calligraphy, the art of handwriting, was considered a skill of great importance. It was practiced using different styles. Akbar's favorite was the Nastaliq, a fluid style with long horizontal stroke. It is written using a piece of trimmed reed with a tip of 5 to 10 mm called column. Dipped in carbon ink Sayadi. The nib of the column is usually split in the middle to facilitate the absorption of ink. Discuss in what ways do you think the production of books today is similar to or different from the ways in which Mughal chronicles were produced? Comment this. A folio in Nastaliq, the work of Muhammad Hussain of Kashmir 1575 to 1605, one of the finest calligraphers at Akbar's court, who was honored with the title Jarin Kalam, golden pen, in recognition of the perfectly proportioned curvature of his letter. The calligrapher has signed his name on the lower section of the page, taking up almost one-fourth of its space. The painted image. As we read the previous section, painters too were involved in the production of Mughal manuscript chronicles narrating the event of the Mughal Empire. Design content alongside the written text, images that describes an event in visual form, where scene of themes in a book were to be given visual expression. The scribe left blank spaces on nearby pages. Painting executed separately by artists were inserted to accompany what was described in words. These paintings were miniatures and could therefore be passed around for viewing and mounting on the pages of manuscript. Paintings served not only to enhance the beauty of a book, but were believed to possess special power of communicating ideas about the kingdom and the power of kings in ways that the written medium could not. The historian Abul Fazl described painting as a magical art. In his views, it had the power to make inanimate objects look as if they possessed life. The production of painting portraying the emperor, his court, and the people who were part of it was a source of constant tension between rulers and representative of the Muslim orthodoxy, the ulama. The latter did not fail to invoke the Islamic prohibition of the portrayal of human beings enshrined in the Quran as the Hadith, which describe an incident from the life of the Prophet Muhammad. Here the prophet is cited as having forbidden the depiction of living beings in a naturalistic manner, as it would suggest that the artist was seeking to the appropriate the power of creation. This was a function that was believed to belong exclusively to God. A Mughal Kitabkhana identify the different tasks involved in the production of a Mughal manuscript depicted in his miniature. Comment this. In praise of Tasveer, Abul Fazl held the art of painting in high esteem, drawing the likeness of the anything in called Tasveer. His majesty from his earliest youth has shown a great predilection for this art and gives it every encouragement as he looks upon it as a mean both of the study and amusement. A very large number of painters have been sent to work each week. Several supervisors and clerks of the imperial workshop submit before the emperor the work done by each artist, and His Majesty gives a reward and increases the monthly salaries of the artists according to the excellence displayed. Most excellent painters are now to be found, and masterpieces worthy of a Behjad may be placed at the side of the wonderful works of the European painters who have attained worldwide fame. The minuteness in detail, the general finish, and the broadness of execution now observed in pictures are incomparable. Even inanimate objects look as if they have life. More than 100 painters have become famous masters of the art. This is especially true of the Hindu artists. These pictures surpasses our conceptions of things. Few indeed in the whole world are found equal to them. Why did Abul Fazl consider the art of painting important? How did he seek to legitimate this art? Comment this. Yet interpretations of the Shariahs change with time. The body of Islamic tradition was interpreted in different ways by various social groups. Frequently, each group put forward an understanding of tradition that would best suit their political needs. Muslim rulers in many Asian regions during centuries of empire buildings regularly commissioned artists to paint their portraits and scene of life in their kingdoms. The Safavid kings of Iran, for example, patronized the finest artists who were trained in workshops set up at court. The names of painters, such as that of Bijaz, contributed to spreading the cultural fame of the Safavid court far and wide. Artists from Iran also made their way to Mughal India. Some were brought to the Mughal court, as in were made to accompany Emperor Humayun to Delhi. Others migrated in search of opportunities to win patronage and prestige. A conflict between the emperor and the spokesman of Orthodox Muslim opinion on question on visual representation of living being was a source of tension at the Mughal court. Akbar's court historian Abul Fazl cites the emperor as saying, "There are many that hate painting, but such men I dislike. It appears to me that an artist has a unique way of recognizing God when he must come to feel that he cannot bestow life on his work." Discuss compare the painter's representation, figure 9.4 of literary and artistic production with that of Abul Fazl, source 1. Comment this. For the Akbarnama and the Badshahnama. Among the important illustrated Mughal chronicles, the Akbarnama and Badshahnama, the chronicles of a king, and the most well-known, each manuscript contain an average of 150 full or double-page painting of battles, siege, hunts, building construction, court scene, etc. The author of Akbarnama, Abul Fazl, grew up in the Mughal capital of Agra. He was widely read in Arabic, Persian, Greek philosophy, and Sufism. Moreover, he was a forceful debater and independent thinker who consistently opposed the views of the conservative ulama. These qualities impressed Akbar, who found Abul Fazl ideally suited as an advisor and spokesperson for his policies. One major objective of the emperor was to free the state from the control of religious orthodoxy. In his role as court historian, Abul Fazl both shaped and articulated the ideas associated with the reign of Akbar. Beginning in 1589, Abul Fazl worked on the Akbarnama for 13 years, repeatedly revised the draft. The chronicle is based on a range of sources, including actual records of events, means wakai, official documents, and oral testimonials of knowledgeable persons. The Akbarnama is divided into three books, of which the first two are chronicles. The third book is Ain-i-Akbari. The first volume contains the history of mankind from Adam to one celestial cycle of Akbar's life, 30 years. The second volume closed in the 46th regnal year 1601 of Akbar. The very next year, Abul Fazl fell victim to the conspiracy hatched by Prince Salim and was murdered by his accomplice Bir Singh Bundela. The Akbarnama was written to provide a detailed description of Akbar's reign in the traditional diachronic sense of recording politically significant event across time, as well as in the more novel senses of giving a synchronic picture of all aspects of Akbar's empire, geographic, social, administrative, and cultural, without reference to chronology. In the Ain-i-Akbari, the Mughal Empire is presented as having a diverse population consisting of Hindus, Jainas, Buddhists, and Muslims, and a composite culture. A diachronic account traces developments over time, whereas a synchronic account depicts one or several situations at one particular moment or point of time. Abul Fazl wrote in a language that was ornate and which attached importance to diction and rhythm, as texts were often read aloud. This Indo-Persian style was patronized at court, and there were a large number of writers who wanted to write like Abul Fazl. A pupil of Abul Fazl, Abul Hamid Lahori, is known as the author of the Badshah Nama. Emperor Shah Jahan, hearing of his talents, commissioned him to write a history of his reign, modeled on the Akbarnama. The Badshah is the official history in 3 volumes, chapters of 10 lunar years each. Lahori wrote the first and second chapters comprising the first 2 decades of the imperial rule, 1627 to 47. These volumes were later revised by Sadullah Khan, Shah Jahan's wazir. Infirmities of old age prevented Lahori from proceeding with the third decade, which was then chronicled by the historians Waris. Travels of the Badshah. Gifting of precious manuscript was an established diplomatic custom under the Mughals. In emulation of this, the Nawab of Awadh gifted the illustrated Badshah to King George III in 1799. Since then, it has been preserved in the English Royal Collections, now at Windsor Castle. In 1994, conservation work required the bound manuscript to be taken apart. This made it possible to exhibit the painting, and in 1997, for the first time, the Badshah painting were shown in exhibition in New Delhi, London, and Washington. During the colonial period, British administrators began to study Indian history and to create an archive of knowledge about the subcontinent to help them better understand the people and the cultures of the empire they sought to rule. The Asiatic Society of Bengal, founded by Sir William Jones in 1784, undertook the editing, printing, and translation of many Indian manuscripts. Edited version of the Akbarnama and Badshah were first published by the Asiatic Society in the 19th century. In the early 20th century, the Akbarnama was translated into English by Henry Beveridge. After years of hard labor, only experts of the Badshah have been translated into English to date. The text in its entirety still awaits translation. Discuss, find out whether there was a tradition of illustrating manuscript in your town or village. Who prepared this manuscript? What were the subjects that they dealt with? How were these manuscripts preserved? Comment this. The ideal kingdom, a divine light. Court chronicles drew upon many sources to show that the power of Mughal kings came directly from God. One of the legends they narrated was that of the Mongol queen Alanka, who was impregnated by a ray of sunshine while resting in her tent. The offspring she bore carried the divine light and passed it on from generation to generation. Abul Fazl placed Mughal kingship as the highest station in the hierarchy of objects receiving light emanating from God. Far-e-Jadi. Here he was inspired by a famous Iranian Sufi, Shihabuddin Surawardi, who first uh, did 1191, who first developed this idea. According to this idea, there was a hierarchy in which the divine light was transmitted to the king, who then became the source of spiritual guidance for his subjects. Paintings, the transmission of notions of luminosity. The origins of Shuawardi's philosophy went back to the Plato's Republic, where God is represented by the symbol of the sun. Shuawardi's writings were universally read in the Islamic world. They were studied by Sheikh Mubarak, who transmitted their ideas to his son Faizi and Abul Fazl, who were trained under him. Painting that accompanied the narrative of the Chronicles transmitted these ideas in a way that left a lasting impression on the minds of viewers. Mughal artists from the 17th century onwards began to portray empires wearing the halo, which they saw on European paintings of Christ and the Virgin Mary to symbolize the light of God. This painting by Abul Hussein shows Jahangir dressed in resplendent clothes and jewels, holding up a portrait of his father Akbar. Akbar is dressed in white, associated in Sufi tradition with the enlightened soul. He prefers a globe symbolic of dynasty authority. In the Mughal Empire. There was no law laying down which of emperor's sons would succeed to the throne. This meant that every dynastic change was accompanied and decided by a fratricidal wars. Towards the end of Akbar's reign, Prince Salim revolted against his father, seized power, and assumed the title of Jahangir. How does this painting describe the relationship between father and son? Why do you think Mughal artists frequently portrayed emperor against dark or dull backgrounds? What are the sources of light in this painting? Comment this. A unifying force. Mughal Chronicle present the empire as comprising many different ethnic and religious communities: Hindus, Jainas, Zoroastrians, and Muslims. As the source of all peace and stability, the emperor stood above all religious and ethnic groups, mediated among them, and ensured that justice and peace prevailed. Abul Fazl described the ideal of Sulikul, absolute peace, as the cornerstone of enlightened rule. In Sulikul, all religions and schools of thought and freedom of expression, but on condition that they did not undermine the authority of the state or fight among themselves. The ideal of Sulikul was implemented through state policies. The nobility under the Mughals was a composite one comprising Iranis, Turanis, Afghans, Rajputs, Deccani's, all of whom were given position and awards purely on the basis of their service and loyalty to the king. Father Akbar abolished the tax on pilgrimage in 1563 and jizya in 1564 as the two were best. On religious discrimination. Instructions were sent to officers of the empire to follow the precept of Suli Kul in administration. All Mughal emperors gave grants to support the building and maintenance of place of worship even when temples were destroyed during war. Grants were later issued for their repair, as we know from the reign of Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. However, during the reign of the latter, the jizya was reimposed on non-Muslim subjects. Just sovereignty as social contract. Abul Fazl's define sovereignty as a social contract. The imperial protects the four essence of his subject, namely life, jan, property, mal, honors, namas, and faith, din, and in return demands obedience and a share of resource. Only just sovereigns were thought to be able to honor the contract with power and divine guidance. Jahangir presenting Prince Quran with a turban jewel seen from the Badshah Nama, painted by the artist Payak. Jahangir shooting the figure of poverty, painting by the artist Abul Hassan. The artist has enveloped the target in a dark cloud to suggest that this is not a real person but a human form used to symbolize an abstract quality. Such a mode of personification in art and literature is termed allegory. The chain of justice is shown descending from heaven. This is how Jahangir described the chain of justice in his memories. After my accession, the first order that I gave was for the sustaining up of the chain of justice, so that if those engaged in the administration of justice should delay or practice hypocrisy in the matter of those seeking justice, the oppressed might come to this chain and shake it so that its noise might attract attention. The chain was made of pure gold, 30 gauge in length and containing 60 bells. Identify the interpret the symbols in painting. Summarize the message of this painting. Come in this. A number of symbols were created for visual representation of the idea of justice, which came to stand for the highest virtue of Mughal monarchy. One of the favorite symbols used by artists was the motif of the lion and the lamb or goat peacefully nestling next to each other. This was meant to signify a realm where both the strong and the weak could exist in harmony. Court scene from the illustrated Badshahnama placed such motifs in a niche directly below the emperor's throne. See figure 9.6. Discuss why was justice regarded as such an important virtue of monarchy in the Mughal Empire. Comment this. 6. Capitals and courts. Capital cities. The heart of the Mughal Empire was its capital city, where the court assembled. The capital cities of the Mughals frequently shifted during the 16th and 17th century. Babur took over the Lodi capital of Agra, though during the 4 years of his reign, the court was frequently on the move. During the 1560s, Akbar had the fort of Agra constructed with red sandstone quarried from the adjoining regions. The Buland Darwaja, Fatehpur Sikri. In 1517, he decided to build a new capital, Fatehpur Sikri. One of the reasons prompting this may have been that Sikri was located on the direct road to Ajmer, where the Dargah of Sheikh Mainuddin Chishti had become an important pilgrimage center. The Mughal emperors entered into a close relationship with Sufis of the Chishti Silsila. Akbar commissions that construction of a white marble tomb of Sheikh Salim Chishti next to the majestic Friday mosque at Sikri. The enormous arched gateway Buland Darwaja was meant to remind visitors of the Mughal victory in Gujarat. In 1585, the capital was transferred to Lahore to bring the Northers under greater control, and Akbar closely watched the frontier for 13 years. Shah Jahan pursued sound fiscal policies and accumulated enough money to indulge his passion for building. Building activity in monarchical culture, as you have seen in the case of earlier rulers, was the most visible and tangible sign of dynastic power, wealth, and prestige. In the case of Muslim rulers, it was also considered an act of piety. In 1648, the court, army, and household moved from Agra to the newly completed imperial capital, Shahjahanabad. It was a new addition to the old residential city of Delhi, with the Red Fort, the Jama Masjid, a tree-lined esplanade with bazaar, means Chandni Chowk, and spacious homes for the nobility. Shah Jahan's new city was appropriate to a more formal vision of a grand monarchy. Axis Mundi is a Latin phrase for a pillar or pole that is visualized as the support of the earth. The Mughal court. The physical arrangement of the court focused on the sovereign mirrored his status as the heart of society's centerpiece was therefore the throne, the takht, which gave physical form to the function of the sovereign and exil mundi. The canopy, a symbol of kingship in India for a millennium, was believed to separate the radiance of the sun from that of the sovereign. Chronicles lay down with great precision the rule defining status among the Mughal elites. In court, status were determined by spatial proximity to the king. The place accorded to a courtier by the rulers was a sign of his importance in the eyes of the emperor. Once the emperor sat on the throne, no one was permitted to move from his position or to leave without permission. Social control in court society was exercised, though carefully defining it. Cornice was a form of the ceremonial situation in which the courtier placed the palm of his right hand against his forehead and bent his head. It suggested that the subject placed his head and seat of the senses and the mind into the hand of humility, presenting it to the royal assembly. Darwari Akbari. Abul Fazl gives a vivid account of Akbar's Darbar whenever His Majesty Akbar holds court. Darbar, a large drum is beaten, the sounds of which are accompanied by divine praise. In this manner, people of all classes receive notice. His Majesty's sons and grandchildren, the grandees of the court, and all other men who have admittance attend to make the cornice and remain standing in their proper places. Learned men of renown and skillful mechanics pay their respect, and the officers of the justice present their reports. His Majesty, with his usual insight, gives order and settle everything in a satisfactory manner. During the whole time, skillful gladiators and wrestlers from all countries hold themselves in readiness, and singers, male and female, are in waiting. Clever jugglers and funny tumblers also are anxious to exhibit their dexterity and agility. Describe the main activities taking place in the Darbar. Comment this. Chahar Taslim is a mode of salutation which begins with the placing the back of the right hand on the ground and raising it gently till the person stands erect. When he puts the palm of his hand upon the crown of his head, it is done 4 Chahar times. Taslim literally means submissions. Full details the form of address, courtesies, and speech which were acceptable in court. The slightest infringement of etiquette was noticed and punished on the spot. The form of salutation to the ruler indicated the person's status in the hierarchy. Deeper prostrations represented higher status. The highest form of submission was Sizda and complete prostration under Shah Jahan. These rituals were replaced with Chahar Taslim and Jamin Bose kissing the ground. The protocols governing diplomatic convoy at the Mughal court were equally explicit. An ambassador presented to the Mughal emperor were expected to offer an acceptable form of greeting either by bowing deeply or kissing the ground, or else to follow the Persian custom of clasping one's hand in front of the chest. Thomas Roe, the English envoy of James I, simply bowed before Jahangir according to European custom. The father shocked the court by demanding a chair. The emperor began his day at sunrise with personal religious devotion or prayers and then appeared on the small balcony, the Jharokha, facing the east. Below, a crowd of people, soldiers, merchants, craftspersons, peasant women with 6 children, waited for a view darshan of the empire. Jharokha darshan was introduced by Akbar with the objectives of broadening the acceptance of the imperial authority as part of popular faith. Shab-e-Barat is the full moon night on the 14th Shaban, the 8th month of the Hijri calendar, and it's celebrated with prayers and fireworks. In the subcontinent, it is the night when the destinies of the Muslim for the coming year are said to be determined and sins forgiven. The Jewel Throne. This is how Shah Jahan's jewel throne, Takhti Murasa, in the hall of public audience in the Agra, place is described in the Badshahnama. The Jarjara structures are the canopy supported by 12-sided pillars and measured 5 cubits in height from the flight of steps to the overhanging dome. On His Majesty's coronation, he had commanded that 86 lakh worth of gems and precious stones and 1 lakh totals of gold worth another 14 lakh should be used in decorating it. The throne was completed in the course of 7 years. And among the precious stones used upon it was a ruby worth 1 lakh of rupee that Shah Abbas Safavi had sent to the late Emperor Jahangir, and on this ruby was inscribed the name of great Emperor Timur Sahibi Quran, Mirza Saruk, Mirza Ulugh Beg, and Shahu Abbas, as well as the names of Emperors Akbar, Jahangir, and that of His Majesty himself. Shah Jahan honoring Prince Aurangzeb at Agra before his wedding, painting by Payag in the Badshahnama. Identify the emperor. Aurangzeb is shown dressed in a yellow jama, upper garments, and green jacket. With little blossom, how is the place and what does his gesture to his father suggest? How are the courtiers shown? Can you locate figure with big turbans to the left? These are depictions of scholars. Comment this. Prince Khurram being weighted in the precious metals in a ceremony called Jashani Vajan or Tuladan from Jahangir's memories. After spending an hour at the Jharokha, the emperor walked to the public hall of audience, Diwani Am, to conduct the primary business of his government. State official presented, reported, and made a request. 2 hours later, the emperor was in the Dawani Khas to hold private audience and discuss confidential matters. High ministers of state placed their petitions before him and tax officials presented their accounts. Occasionally, the emperor viewed the works of highly reputed artists or building plans of architects. Mimar. On special occasions such as the anniversary of accession to the throne, Eid, Sabi Barat, and Holi, the court was full of life. Perfumed candles set in rich holders and placed a wall festooned with colorful hangings made a tremendous impression on visitors. The Mughal king celebrated three majors: Dara Sukh's weddings. Weddings were celebrated lavishly in the imperial household in 1633. The weddings of Dara Sukh and Nadira, the daughter of Prince Pervez, was arranged by Princess Jahanara and Sati Nisa Khanum, the chief maid of the late Empress Mumtaz Mahal. An exhibition of the wedding gifts was arranged in the Dawani Arm. In the afternoon, the emperor and the ladies of the harem paid a visit to it, and in the evening, nobles were allowed access. The bride's mother similarly arranged her presented in the same hall, and Shah Jahan went to see them. The Hinabandi application of the henna dye ceremony was performed in the Dawani Khas. Betel leaf, pan, cardamom, and dry fruit were distributed among the attendants of the court. The total cost of the wedding was raised 32 lakhs, of which raised 6 lakhs was contributed by the imperial treasury and 16 lakhs by the Jahanara, including the amount earlier set aside by Mumtaz Mahal, and the rest by the bride's mother. These paintings from the Nama depict some of activities associated with the occasion. Describe what you see in the pictures. Comment this. Festivals a year, the solar and lunar birthdays of the monarch and Noroj. The Iranian New Year on the vernal equinox. On his birthday, the monarch was weighted against various commodities which were then distributed in charity. Titles and gifts. Grand titles were adopted by the Mughal emperor at the time of coronation or after a victory over an enemy. High sounding and rhythmic, they created an atmosphere of awe in the audience when announced by ushers, means Nakib. Mughal coins carried the full title of the reigning emperor with regal protocol. The granting of titles to men of merit was an important aspect of Mughal polity. A man's ascent in the court hierarchy could be traced through the titles he held. The title Asaf Khan for one of the highest ministers originated with Asaf, the legendary minister of the Prophet King Suleiman or Solomon. The title Mirza Raja was accorded by Aurangzeb to his two highest ranking nobles, Jai Singh and Jaswant Singh. Titles could be earned or paid for. Mir Khan offered raise 1 lakh to Aurangzeb for the latter alif, that is A, to be added to his name to make it Amir Khan. Other awards include the Robe of Honor, Khilat, a garment once worn by the emperor and imbued with his benediction. One gift, the Saropa, hair to foot, consisted of a tunic, a turban, and a shas, patka. Jeweled ornaments were often given as gift by the emperor. The lotus blossom set of jewels, Padma Murasa, was given only the exceptional circumstances. A courtier never approached the emperor empty-handed. He offered either a small sum of money, najar, or a large amount peshkas. In diplomatic relations, gifts were regarded as a sign of respect. Ambassadors performed the important function of negotiating treaties and relationships between competing political powers. In such a context, gift had an important symbolic role. Thomas Roe was disappointed when a ring he had presented to Ashaf Khan was returned to him for the reason that it was worth him merely 400 rupees. A Mughal turban box. Discuss are some of ritual or practices associated with the Mughals followed by present day political leaders. Comment this. 7. The Imperial Households. The term harem is frequently used to refer to the domestic world of the Mughals. It originated in the Persian word harem, meaning a sacred place. The Mughal household consisted of the emperor's wives and concubines. His near and distant relatives, mother, step and foster mother, sister, daughters, daughter-in-law, aunts, children, etc., and female servants and slaves. Polygamy was practiced widely in the Indian subcontinent, especially among the ruling groups. Both for the Rajput clans as well as the Mughals, marriage was a way of cementing political relationship and forging alliance. The gift of territories was often accompanied by the gift of a daughter in marriage. This ensured a continuing hierarchical relationship between ruling groups. It was through the link of marriage and the relationship that developed as a result that the Mughals were able to form a vast kinship network that linked them to important groups and helped to hold a vast empire together. Part of the inner apartments in Fatehpur Sikri. In the Mughal household, a distinction was maintained between wives who came from the royal families, begums, and other wives, aghas, who were not of noble birth. The begums married after receiving huge amount of cash and valuable as dower, mahar, naturally received a higher status and greater attention from their husband than did aghas. The concubines, agacha or the lesser agha, occupy the lowest position in the hierarchy of the female intimately related to royalty. They all receive monthly allowance in cash supplemented with gifts according to their status. The lineage based family structure was not entirely static. The agha and the agacha could rise to the position of a begum depending on the husband's will and provided that he did not already have four wives. Love and motherhood played important roles in elevating such women to the status of legally wedded wives. Apart from wives, numerous male and female slaves populated the Mughal household. The tasks they performed varied from the most mundane to those requiring skill, tact, and intelligence. Slave Anuj Khajasara moved between the external and internal life of the household as guards, servants, and also as agents for dabbling in commerce. After Nur Jahan Mughal queens and princesses began to control significant financial resources. Shah Jahan's daughters Jahanara, Roshanara enjoyed an annual income often equal to that of high imperial mansabdars. Jahanara in addition received revenues from the port of city of Surat, which was a lucrative center of overseas trade. Birth of Prince Salim and Fatehpur Sikri, painted by Ramdas Akbarnama. Describe the activities that the artists are depicted in each of the section of the painting on the basis of the tasks being performed by different people. Identify the members of the imperial establishment that make up the scene. Control over resources enabled important women of the Mughal household to commission building and gardens. Jahanara participated in many architectural projects of Shah Jahan's new capital, Shahjahanabad, means Delhi. Among these was an imposing double-storied caravanserai with a courtyard and garden. The Bazaar of Chandni Chowk, the throbbing center of Shahjahanabad, was designed by Jahanara. An interesting book giving us a glimpse into the domestic world, the Mughals in the Humayun Nama, written by Gulbadan Begum. Gulbadan was the daughter of Babur, Humayun's sister and Akbar's son Gulbadan, who could write fluently in Turkish and Persian. When Akbar commissioned Abul Fazl to write a history of his reign, they requested his aunt to record her memories of earlier times under Babur and Humayun. For Abul Fazl to draw up. What Gulbadan wrote was no eulogy of Mughal empire, rather to describe in great detail the conflicts and tensions among the princes and kings and the important mediating role elderly women of the family played in resolving some of these conflicts. The imperial officials, recruitment and rank. Mughal chronicles, especially the Akbarnama, have bequeathed a vision of empire, while the rest of the kingdom has been portrayed as following his order. Yet, if we look more closely at the rich information these stories provide about the apparatus of the Mughal state, we may be able to, to understand the ways in which the imperial organizations was dependent on several different institutions to be able to function effectively. One important pillar of the Mughal state was its corps of officers, also referred to by historians collectively as the nobility. The nobility was recruited from diverse ethnic and religious groups. This ensured that no faction was large enough to challenge the authority of the state. The officer corps of the Mughals was described as a bouquet of flowers, guldasta, held together by loyalty to the emperor. In Akbar's imperial service, Turani and Iranian nobles were present from the earliest phase of carving out a political domination. Dominion. Many had accompanied Humayun, others migrated later to the Mughal court. The Mughal nobility. This is how Chadraban Brahman described the Mughal nobility in his book Char Chaman, Four Gardens, written during the reign of Shah Jahan. People from many races, Arabs, Iranian, Turks, Tajiks, Kurds, Tatars, Russians, Abyssinians, and so on, and from many countries, Turkey, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Arabia, Iran, Khorasan, Turan. In fact, different groups and classes of people from all society have sought refuge in the imperial court, as well as different groups from India, men with knowledge and skill, as well as warriors from example Bukharis and Bhakharis, Saidis of genuine lineage, Sakhajadas with noble ancestry, Afghan tribes such as the Lodhis, Rohillas, Yusufjai, and caste of the Rajputs, who were to be addressed as Rana, Raja, Rao, Rayan, that is, Rathore, Sisodia, Kachowa, Hada, Gaud, Chauhan, Panwar, Baduria, Solanki, Bundela, Sekhat, and all the other Indian tribes such as Gakkar, Khokkar, Baluchi, and other were welded the shore and mansabs from 100 to 7,000 jat. Likewise, landowners from the steppes and mountains from the regions of Karnataka, Bengal, Assam, Udaipur, Srinagar, Kumaon, Tibet, Kishtwar, and so on, whole tribes and groups of them have been privileged to kiss the threshold of the imperial court, that is, attend the court or find employment. Two ruling groups of Indian origin entered the imperial services from 1560s onward, the Rajputs and the Indian Muslim Shahjadas. The first to join was the Rajput chief Raja Varmal Kachawa of Amber, to whose daughter Akbar got married. Members of Hindu caste inclined toward education and accountancy were also promoted, a famous example being Akbar's finance minister Raja Chodarmal, who belonged to the Khatri caste. Iranian gained high offices under Jahangir, whose politically influential queen Nur Jahan, dated 1645, was an Iranian. Aurangzeb appointed Rajputs to high position, and under him the Marathas accounted for a sizable number within the body of officers. All holders of government offices held ranks mansabs comprising two numerical designation jat, which was an indicator of position in the imperial hierarchy, and the salary of the official mansabdar, and sawar, which indicated the number of horsemen he was required to maintain in service. In the 17th century, mansabdars of 1000 jat or above ranked as nobles, umara, which is the plural of armies. Nobles at court, the Jesuit priest Father Antonio Monserrati, resident at the court of Akbar, noticed, in order to prevent the great nobles becoming insolent through the unchallenged enjoyment of power, the king summons them to court and give them imperious command. As though they were his slaves, the obedience to these commands ill suits their exalted rank and dignity. What does Father Monserrati's observation suggest about the relationship between the Mughal emperor and his officials? Comment this. The noble participated in military campaigns with their armies and also served as officer of the empire in the provinces. Each military commander recruited, equipped and trained the main striking arms, the Mughal army, the cavalry, the troopers, maintained superior horses branded on a flank by the imperial mark, Dag. The imperial personally reviewed changes in rank, titles, and official position for all except the lowest rank officer. Akbar, who designed the Mansab system, also established spiritual relationship with a select band of his nobility by treating them as his disciples, murid. Tajweed was a petition presented by a nobleman to the emperor recommending that an applicant be recruited as mansabdar. For members of the nobility, imperial service was a way of acquiring power, wealth, and the highest possible reputation. A person wishing to join the service petitions through a noble, who presented a tajweed to the emperor. If the applicant was found suitable, a mansab was granted to him. The Mir Bakshi, paymaster general, stood in open court on the right of the emperor and presented all candidates for appointment or promotion, while his office prepared order bearing his seal and signature as well as those of the emperor. There were two Other important minister at the center, the Diwan-e-Ala, finance minister, and a Sadr minister of the grants or Madadimas in the charge of appointing local judges or Qazis. The three ministers occasionally came together as an advisory body but were independent of each other. Akbar, with this and other advisors, shaped the administrative, fiscal, and monetary institution of the empire. Noble stations at the court, Tainati Rakab, were a reserve force to be deputed to the province of military campaign. They were duty bound to appear twice daily, morning and evening, to express submission to the emperor in the public audience hall. They shared the responsibility for guarding the emperor and his household round the clock. Information and empire. The keeping of exact and detailed record was a major concern of the Mughal administration. The Mir Boxi supervised the crops of court writers, Wakia Navis, who recorded all applications and documents presented to the court and all imperial orders. Foreman, in addition, agents Wakil of nobles and regional ruler recorded the entire proceeding of the court under the heading News from the Exalted Court. Akbarati Darbari Mullah, with the date and time of the court session, Pahar. The Akbarat contains all kinds of information such as attendance at the court, grant of office and titles, diplomatic missions, present receipts on the inquiries made by the emperor about the health of an officer. This information is valuable for writing the history of the public and private lives of kings and nobles. News reports and important official documents travel across the length and breadth of the region under Mughal rule by imperial posts round the clock. Relays of foot runners, qasid or patmar, carried papers rolled up in bamboo containers. The emperor received reports from even distant provincial capitals. Within a few days, agents of nobles posted outside the capital and Rajput princes and the tributary rulers all assiduously copied this announcement and sent their contents by messenger back to their masters. The empire was connected by a surprisingly rapid information loop for public news. Beyond the center, provincial administration. The division of function established at the center was replicated in the provinces, means subas, where the minister had their corresponding subordinates, means Diwan, Baksi, and Sadr. The head of the provincial administration was the governor, means Subadar, who reported directly to the emperor. The Sarkar, into which each Suba was divided, often overlapped with the jurisdiction with Fauzdars, means commandants, who were deployed with contingents of heavy cavalry and musketeers in discard. The local administration was looked after at the level of the Pargana, means sub-districts, by three semi-hereditary officers: the Konango, keeper of revenue records, the Chaudhary, in charge of revenue collection, and the Kaji. Each department of administration maintained a large support staff of clerks, accountants, auditors, messengers, and other functionaries who were technically qualified officials functioning in accordance with standardized rules and procedures, and generating copies, written orders, and record percent was made the language of administration throughout, but local languages were used for village account. The Mughal chroniclers usually portrayed the emperor and his court as controlling the entire administrative apparatus down to the village level. Yet, as you have seen, chapter 8, this could hardly have been a process free of tension. The relationship between the local landed magnates, the jamindars, and the representatives of the Mughal Empire were sometimes marked by conflicts over authority and the share of the resources. The Jamindars often succeeded in mobilizing peasant support against the state. read section 2, chapter 8 once more and discuss the extent to which the emperor's presence may have been felt in villages. Comment this. Beyond the frontiers, writers of Chronicle list many high-sounding titles assumed by the Mughal emperors. This included general titles such as Shahenshah, Kings of Kings, or specific titles assumed by individual kings upon ascending the throne such as Jahangir, World Savior, or Shah Jahan, King of the World. The chronicles often drew on these titles and their meaning to reiterate the claims of the Mughal emperor to uncontested territorial and political control, yet the same contemporary histories provide accounts of diplomatic relationships and conflicts with neighboring political powers. This reflects some tensions and political rivalry arising from competing regional interests. The Siege of Kandahar. The Safavids and Kandahar. The political and diplomatic relationship between the Mughal kings and the neighboring countries of Iran and Turan hinged on the control of the frontier defined by the Hindu Kush mountain and separated Afghanistan from the region of the Iran and Central Asia. All conquerors who sought to make their way into the Indian subcontinent had to cross the Hindu Kush to have access to North India. A constant aim of Mughal policy was to ward off this potential danger by controlling strategic outposts, notably Kabul and Kandahar. Kandahar was a bone of contention between the Safavids and the Mughals. The fortress town had initially been in the possession of Jahangir's dream, and inscription on the miniature records that Jahangir commissioned Abul Hassan to render in painting a dream of emperor had recently. Abul Hassan painted the scene portraying the two rulers Jahangir and the Safavid Shah Abbas in friendly embrace. Both kings were depicted in their traditional costume, and the figure of the Shah is based upon portraits made by Bisan Das, who accompanied the Mughal embassy to Iran in 1613. This gave a sense of authenticity to a scene which is fictional, as the two rulers had never met. Look at the painting carefully. How is the relationship between Jahangir and Shah Abbas shown? Compare their physics and postures. What do the animals stand for? What does the map suggest? Comment this. Humayun reconquered in 1595 by Akbar, while the Safavid court retained diplomatic relations with the Mughal. It continues to stake claims to Kandahar. In 1613, Jahangir sent a diplomatic envoy to the court of Shah Abbas to plead the Mughal case for retaining Kandahar, but the mission failed. In the winter of 1622, a Persian army besieged Kandahar. The ill-prepared Mughal garrison was defeated and had to surrender the fortress and the city to the Safavid. The Ottomans, pilgrimage and trade. The relationship between the Mughals and the Ottomans was marked by the concern to ensure free movement of merchants and pilgrims in the territories under Ottoman control. This was especially true for the Hijaz, the part of Ottoman Arabia where the important pilgrim center of Mecca and Medina were located. The Mughal emperor usually combined religion and commerce by exporting valuable merchandise to Aden and Mecca, both Red Sea ports, and distributing the proceeds of the sales in the charity to the keepers of shrine and religious men there. However, when Aurangzeb discovered case of misappropriation of funds sent to Arabia, he favored their distribution in India, which he thought was as much a house of God as Mecca. The accessible emperor in the account of his experience Monserrati, who was a member of the first Jesuit missions, says it is hard to exaggerate how accessible he means. Akbar makes himself to all who wish audience of him, for he creates an opportunity almost every day for any of the common people or of the nobles to see him and the converse with him. And he endeavors to show himself present, spoken, and affable rather than severe towards all who come to speak with him. It is very remarkable how great an effect this courtesy and affability has in attaching him to his mind, to the mind of his subject. Compare this account with source 2. Comment this. Jesuits and Mughal courts. Europe received knowledge of the India through the accounts of Jesuits, missionaries, travelers, merchants, and diplomats. The Jesuits' accounts are the earliest impressions of the Mughal courts ever recorded by European writers following the discovery of the direct sea route to India at the end of the 15th century. Portuguese merchants established a network of trading stations in coastal cities. The Portuguese kings were also interested in the propagation of Christianity with the help of the missionaries of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. The Christian missions of India during the 16th century were part of the process of trade and empire building. Akbar was curious about Christianity and dispatched an embassy to Goa to invite Jesuit persons. The first Jesuit mission reached the Mughal court at Fatehpur Sikri in 1580 and stayed for about 2 years. The Jesuits spoke to Akbar about Christianity and debated in virtues with the ulama. Two more missions were sent to the Mughal court at Lahore in 1591 and 1595. The Jesuit accounts are based on personal observation and shed light on the character and mind of the emperor. At public assemblies, the Jesuits were assigned places in close proximity to Akbar's throne. They accompanied him on his campaigns, tutored his children, and were often companions of his leisure hours. The Jesuit accounts corroborate the information given in Persian chronicles about state official and the general conditions of life in Mughal times. Discuss what were the considerations that shaped the relations of the Mughal rulers with their contemporaries. Comment this. 10. Questioning formal religion. The high respect shown by Akbar towards the members of the Jesuit missions impressed them deeply. They interpreted the emperor's open interest in the doctrines of Christianity as a sign of his acceptance of their faith. This can be understood in the light of the prevailing climate of religious intolerance in Western Europe. Monserrati remarked that the king cared little that in allowing everyone to follow his religion, he was in reality violating all. Akbar's quest for religious knowledge led to interfaith debates in the Ibadat Khana at Fatehpur Sikri between learned Muslim, Hindus, Jainas, Parsis, and Christians. Akbar's religious views matured as he acquired scholars of different religions and sects and gathered knowledge about their doctrines. Increasingly, he moved away from the orthodox Islamic ways of understanding religion towards a self-conceived form of divine worship focused on light and the sun. We have seen that Akbar and Abul Fazl created a philosophy on the light and used it to shape the image of the king and ideology of the state. In this, a divinity inspired individual has supreme sovereignty over his people and complete control over his enemies. Religious debates in the court. Padre Rudolph Acoiviva was the leader of the first Jesuit mission. His name is written on top of the painting. Home in the Haram. This is an excerpt from Abdul Qadir Baduni, Muntakab ut Tariq, a theologian and a courtier, Baduni was critical of his employer's policies and did not wish to make the contents of his book public. From early youth, in compliment to his wives, the daughters of Rajas of Hind, His Majesty had been performing hum in the harem, which is a ceremony derived from fire worship, Atis Prasti, but on the new year of the 25th regnal year, 1578, he prostrated publicly before the sun and the fire. In the evening, the whole court had to rise up respectfully when the lamps and candles were lighted. These ideas were in harmony with the perspective of the court chroniclers, who give us a sense of the processes by which the Mughal rulers could effectively assimilate such a heterogeneous populace within an imperial edifice. The name of the dynasty continued to enjoy legitimacy in the subcontinent for a century and a half, even after its geographical extent and the political control it exercised had diminished considerably. Blue tiles from a shrine in Multan, brought by migrant artisans from Iran. Timeline. Some major Mughal chronicles and memoirs. See 1530 manuscript of Babur's memories in Turkish, saved from a storm because part of the family collection of the Timurids. See 1587 Gulbadan Begum begins to write the Humayun Nama. 1589 Babur's memories translated into the Persian as Babur Nama. 1589 to 1602 Abul Fazl works on the Akbar Nama. 1605 to 22 Jahangir writes his memories, the Jahangir Nama. 1639 to 47 Lahori composes the first two drafter of the Badshah Nama. 1650 Muhammad Waris begins to chronicle the third decade of the Shah Jahan's reign. 1668 Alamgir Nama, a history of the first 10 years Aurangzeb's reign, compiled by Muhammad Kazim. Answer in 100 to 150 words. Comment this. Write a short essay about 250 to 300 words on the following. Comment this. Many Mughal manuscripts contain drawing of birds. Map work. On an outline map of the world, plot the areas which the Mughals had political and cultural relations. Comment this. Project, choose one. Find out more about any one Mughal chronicle. Prepare a report describing the author and the language, style, and content of the text. To describe at least two visual used to illustrate the chronicles of your choice, focusing on the symbols used to indicate the power of the emperor. Comment this. Prepare a report comparing the present day system of government to the Mughal court and the administration, focusing on ideals of rulership, court rituals, and means of recruitment into the imperial services, highlighting the similarities and differences that you notice. Comment this. A Mughal painting depicting squirrels on a tree.